Imagine this. You've been driving for hours, the weight of fatigue pulling at you with every mile. The road ahead stretches endlessly, swallowed by the thick darkness of night. On either side, barren landscapes fade into shadows, and the only sound is the steady hum of your car engine. It's just you, the road, and a growing sense of unease you can't quite explain. Your gas tank is nearly empty. You check your phone, but there's no signal. The isolation starts to feel heavier, more oppressive. Then, just as you begin to wonder how far you can push it before you're stranded, you see it, a glimmer of light through the haze of rain on your windshield. A sign. Faint, flickering, but unmistakable. You squint to make out the letters. Vacancy. It's a motel. A relic of another time, standing alone in the middle of nowhere. Its neon light hums faintly, casting a sickly glow on the cracked pavement below. Relief washes over you, but it's uneasy. Something about the sight doesn't feel right. The building is silent, the windows dark. You pull into the lot anyway. The gravel crunches loudly under your tires, the sound far too loud in the quiet of the night. The rain has slowed, but the air is thick and heavy, carrying a smell you can't quite place, something damp, old, forgotten. As you step out of the car, you notice the small details that don't make sense. A single light flickers above the office door, its bulb buzzing irregularly. The sign on the door says, "Open," but the inside looks abandoned. Still, you tell yourself it's fine. You've been on the road too long. You just need a place to rest, a few hours of sleep, and you'll be on your way. You push the door open. The bell above it jingles, but no one comes to greet you. The room smells of mildew and something faintly metallic. The desk is cluttered with yellowed papers and a rusted bell that seems to have been untouched for years. Just as you consider leaving, a figure appears from the shadows. They move slowly, almost reluctantly, as if they've been waiting too long for someone to arrive. Their faces are pale, their eyes dull, like they're looking through you rather than at you. They don't speak, just slide a key across the counter, the cold metal scraping against the wood. You take it without thinking, feeling the unease in your chest deepen. Room 12. The hallway feels endless as you walk toward it. The carpet beneath your feet is damp, the air stale. Doors line the corridor, some cracked open just enough to reveal glimpses of rooms that look wrong. A chair knocked over. A light swinging slowly from the ceiling. When you reach your room, the door creaks open before you even touch the handle. Inside, the smell hits you first, mold, damp wood, and something sharper, like copper. The wallpaper is peeling in long, jagged strips, and the bed looks as though it's been slept in but never made. You tell yourself it's just for the night. Just a few hours. But as you sit on the edge of the bed, you notice it. A sound. It's faint at first, a soft, rhythmic tapping, almost like someone knocking. You glance at the door. It's locked. Then you look toward the closet. The knocking grows louder, more deliberate. Your pulse quickens, your breathing shallow. You want to move, to get up and leave, but your body won't listen. And then, as suddenly as it began, the sound stops. You sit there in silence, the room pressing in on you. You convince yourself it was nothing. Maybe the pipes. Maybe the old building is settling. You lie back on the bed, trying to ignore the feeling that something is watching you. And that's when you hear it. A whisper. Faint, almost imperceptible. It's coming from the closet. Some places aren't meant to be found. Some doors are better left unopened. And some stories. They stay with you, whether you want them to or not. Tonight, I'll take you to 3 such places. Abandoned motels where the air is heavy with forgotten memories, where the walls seem to breathe, and where those who enter often leave behind more than they ever imagined. The first is about a traveler who checked in but never checked out. The second, a couple on their honeymoon, who thought they were alone, but weren't. And the third? Well, it's about a room that was never supposed to exist, and the horrors that waited behind its door. So, join me. But be warned, these aren't just stories. They're warnings. And as you listen, you might want to keep the lights on. Because in some places, once you've heard about them, they'll never really leave you. The Hollow Pines Motel once stood as a pit stop for weary travelers passing through the remote stretch of Highway 46. Built in the 1980s, it was unremarkable: 20 rooms, a small office, and a faded swimming pool out back. By the 2000s, time had taken its toll. The motel closed its doors, abandoned to the elements. But Hollow Pines is more than just a crumbling relic. It's a place with a history that some would rather forget. You see, people who stayed here often left something behind: a strange story, a trace of fear, and sometimes, their lives. In 2003, Jake Turner, a traveling salesman, booked room 104 for a single night. It was supposed to be a quick stop before heading home to his wife and 2 kids. Jake never made it. The last time anyone saw him alive was when he handed over his credit card at the front desk. The clerk that night, a young man named Dean, said Jake seemed normal enough. Tired, polite. He didn't even glance at the flickering light above the desk or the unsettling peeling wallpaper. But Dean remembered one thing clearly: Jake hesitated when he walked toward his room, glancing back as if something had caught his attention. Room 104 was the last room on the right, closest to the woods. Jake's luggage was found neatly placed inside, the bed untouched. His car was parked in the same spot outside. But Jake himself? He vanished. The police investigated, of course. They questioned Dean and searched the surrounding woods. But there was no sign of Jake. His suitcase contained a change of clothes, toiletries, and a novel with a dog-eared page. His wallet and keys were never found. Few years later, Hollow Pines became a destination for urban explorers. They came with cameras, eager to document the decay. But room 104 held a different kind of fascination. One such explorer, Sarah Collins, entered the room in 2015 with her camera rolling. The footage starts innocently enough: peeling wallpaper, a cracked mirror, graffiti scrawled on the walls. But as Sarah pans the camera across the room, she captures something chilling: a shadowy figure standing in the corner, motionless. The strange part? She didn't see it in real time. It was only visible when she reviewed the footage. Another explorer, Mark, claimed he heard whispers while inside. He described the voice as low and urgent, repeating a single phrase: "Help me." Mark left in a panic and swore never to return. But the most disturbing discovery came from a team of anomalous activity experts. They set up a recorder in room 104, asking questions into the empty air. When they played the audio back, they heard faint breathing and a voice. The voice said, "He's still here." One of the investigators opened the closet door, and immediately, the temperature in the room dropped. The camera footage shows the investigator stumbling back, clutching his chest, gasping for air. He later described feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, like something was pressing down on him. They left without finishing the investigation. Jake Turner's disappearance was never solved. His wife passed away years later, never knowing what became of him. Some say his restless spirit lingers in room 104, forever searching for a way back. Others believe something darker resides there, something that took Jake and left his family with nothing but questions. To this day, locals warn against entering the Hollow Pines Motel. They say if you listen carefully near room 104, you can hear a voice, soft, desperate, pleading for help. But once you hear it, you might find yourself drawn back, unable to resist its call. And if you do, you may never leave. What do you think happened to Jake Turner? Could it be the work of something supernatural, or is there another explanation? Whispering Willows Motel wasn't always abandoned. In its heyday, it was a charming roadside escape, a place where newlyweds often spent their first nights together, believing they'd found a slice of privacy and romance in the middle of nowhere. But over time, its charm faded. Guests stopped coming, and the motel fell into disrepair. It's said that the honeymoon suite, room 207, holds the darkest story of them all. In 2004, Jessica and Michael Avery arrived at Whispering Willows as part of their cross-country honeymoon. They were young, in love, and excited for the adventures ahead. But they didn't realize that their first night there would also be their last. Jessica and Michael checked in late that evening. The owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Calloway, handed them the key to room 207 with an unsettling smile. "If you hear anything unusual," she said, her voice low and raspy, "stay in your room. Don't go wandering." Michael laughed it off, thinking it was just a creepy old lady trying to spook them. Jessica, however, felt uneasy. She couldn't shake the feeling that Mrs. Calloway wasn't joking. The honeymoon suite was a relic of the past, floral wallpaper yellowed with age, a dusty chandelier swaying faintly as if moved by an unseen breeze. But the bed was surprisingly well made, its pristine white sheets in eerie contrast to the rest of the room. As they settled in, Jessica noticed something odd. A large, oval mirror hung on the wall across from the bed. Its surface was warped, as if it had seen things it shouldn't. When she asked Michael to help her take it down, he laughed. "Come on, Jess. It's just a mirror," he said. But when Jessica looked at her reflection, something felt wrong. The room behind her in the mirror seemed off. The shadows were deeper, and she could have sworn she saw movement, just for a moment, out of the corner of her eye. That night, Jessica woke up suddenly. The room was freezing, her breath visible in the dim light of the bedside lamp. She turned to wake Michael, but he was already sitting up, staring at the mirror. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Jessica strained her ears. Faint whispers seemed to echo through the room, like a distant conversation just out of reach. But the strange thing was, they were coming from the mirror. Michael, trying to be brave, got out of bed and approached it. The whispers grew louder, more distinct. "It's just the wind," he said, his voice trembling. But as he reached out to touch the glass, the whispers stopped. Then, a handprint appeared on the other side of the mirror. It was small, delicate, like a child's, but it pressed firmly against the glass as if trying to push through. Jessica screamed, and the room plunged into chaos. The lights flickered violently, the walls seemed to tremble, and the whispers erupted into a deafening roar. The mirror began to crack, spiderweb fractures spreading across its surface. Michael grabbed Jessica, pulling her toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. Something heavy pushed against it from the other side. The air grew thick, oppressive, and a low growl filled the room, coming from everywhere and nowhere. In a moment of desperation, Michael threw a chair at the mirror, shattering it into 1,000 shards. The noise stopped instantly, replaced by an unnatural silence. But the nightmare wasn't over. In the shards of broken glass scattered across the floor, Jessica and Michael saw dozens of faces staring back at them, distorted, angry, trapped. And then, the largest shard began to move. Slowly, it turned toward them, reflecting not their terrified faces, but the figure of a woman in a tattered wedding dress, standing behind them. The next morning, Mrs. Calloway found room 207 empty. The bed was untouched, and Jessica and Michael's belongings were still there. The only thing out of place was the mirror, now perfectly intact, hanging on the wall as if it had never been broken. The couple was never seen again. The police found no evidence of foul play, no sign of a struggle. But locals say their faces can sometimes be seen in the mirror, their mouths open in silent screams. Mrs. Calloway boarded up the room shortly after and refused to speak of it again. Whispering Willow's Motel closed down soon after, left to decay like the stories of those who stayed there. Some say the mirror is cursed, a gateway to something far darker than we can understand. Others claim it feeds on the fear of those who dare to look into it. So, if you ever stumble upon Whispering Willows, don't go into room 207. And whatever you do, don't look into the mirror. What do you think happened to Jessica and Michael? Could the mirror be a doorway to another world, or was it something else entirely? The Timber Creek Inn was built in the 1980s as a roadside haven for travelers heading through the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest. It was a quiet, unassuming place with nothing particularly remarkable about it, except for one detail. Room 301. Locals will tell you room 301 doesn't exist, and the motel's original blueprints back them up. The rooms were numbered sequentially, from 300 to 302. But if you were to walk the second floor hallway late at night, you'd find something strange, a door, faded and unmarked, standing where no door should be. And behind that door? Well, no one who's entered room 301 has ever been the same. In 1999, the Timber Creek Inn was under new management. The owner, Richard Harlow, was a no-nonsense businessman who dismissed the local rumors as silly superstitions. He decided to clean up the place and renovate the second floor, hoping to attract more customers. When construction began, workers stumbled upon something odd. The wall where room 301 supposedly didn't exist felt hollow. Intrigued, Harlow ordered the crew to break through. Behind the drywall, they found a door. It was older than the rest of the building. The wood was warped, the brass handle tarnished. There was no number, no indication it was ever part of the motel. Curiosity got the better of them. They pried it open, expecting to find an unused storage space. Instead, they discovered a room, immaculate, fully furnished, and yet, wrong. The furniture was vintage, from a time well before the Timber Creek Inn was built. The air was heavy with the scent of lavender and something faintly metallic. At first, Harlow dismissed it as an elaborate prank, but the workers were uneasy. They refused to enter the room again. Still, Harlow saw an opportunity. He had the door cleaned and reopened room 301 to guests, offering it as a unique vintage experience. The first guest was a traveling journalist named Ellen Grant. She checked in late, requesting a quiet room where she could finish her article. Room 301 seemed perfect. That night, the staff heard screams echoing through the second floor. By the time they reached the room, Ellen was gone. Her belongings were still there, her suitcase, her typewriter, even her shoes neatly placed by the bed. The only sign of her was a single sentence, typed on the paper in her typewriter: "It's watching me." The room was sealed off again. But over the years, others couldn't resist the allure. Urban legends, dares, and drunken curiosity led a handful of people to force their way into room 301. The stories that followed were as chilling as they were varied. In 2017, a group of college students broke into the Timber Creek Inn. They had heard the stories about room 301 and decided to stream their adventure live. Armed with flashlights and a shaky phone camera, they made their way to the second floor. The footage starts innocently enough: nervous laughter, whispered jokes. But as they approached the unmarked door, the atmosphere changed. The air seemed to grow heavier, and their breaths became visible as if the temperature had dropped. When they forced the door open, the live stream abruptly cut out. The next day, search parties found their car abandoned in the motel parking lot, but there was no sign of the students. The room itself was undisturbed. On the bed, however, they found a Polaroid photo. It showed the students huddled together, their expressions frozen in terror. But something wasn't right. Behind them in the photo was a tall, shadowy figure, its face obscured but its presence undeniable. Locals now say room 301 isn't just a room. It's a trap, a space that doesn't belong in our world. Once you step inside, you're no longer in control. Time doesn't move the same way. And whatever lives in that room, it's waiting for someone to let it out. Timber Creek Inn was demolished in 2022, but room 301 wasn't destroyed. At least, that's what the demolition crew said. One worker swore he saw the door, still intact, lying on the forest floor near the rubble. He claimed it was standing upright, as if held by an invisible force. The crew left it there, refusing to touch it. To this day, hikers in the area report strange sightings: a door standing alone in the woods, creaking softly as if moved by the wind. They say if you listen closely, you can hear faint whispers coming from the other side. But if you're brave, or foolish, enough to open it, don't expect to come back. Because some doors aren't meant to be opened, and some rooms should never exist. What would you do if you stumbled upon a door like this in the middle of the woods? Would you open it, or walk away? Three motels, 3 nightmares, and countless unanswered questions. What is it about these forgotten places that calls to the lost and the restless? Some say it's the shadows of the past that refuse to stay buried. Others claim that these motels are more than just crumbling buildings, they are doorways to something darker, something that thrives on fear. We may never know the true stories behind these abandoned rooms, but one thing is certain: some places are better left forgotten. And some secrets should never be unearthed. Because once you open that door, you may never find your way back. Which story chilled you the most? Was it the disappearance at Hollow Pines, the horrors hidden in room 207, or the door that shouldn't exist in Timber Creek? Share your thoughts below and let us know which one left you with the most questions, and the most fear. And if you enjoyed these disturbing tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another terrifying story. There's always more darkness waiting to be uncovered.